Welcome to Middle Class Matters, Business News in English from Dr. CMA Allegation. The world's largest democracy is collapsing before our eyes. Part 3. Narendra's multi-pronged attack on Indian democracy explained. There is no doubt that Narendra's agenda is illiberal in the sense that it involves asserting the legal and social dominance of the Hindu at the expense of Muslims and other minorities. Narendra insists that he is merely acting on behalf of the majority, that he and his government are honoring India's historic status as mother of democracy. His long record of anti-democratic policy says otherwise. Some of the Narendra's tactics involve clever legislation. Take campaign finance. Under Narendra, Parliament set up a new system that allows for unlimited donations through the purchasing of electoral bonds, a system that all but announces to wealthy donors that the government knows which party you gave money to. Another tactic has been the manipulation of appointment powers. Modi has seized control over the judicial collegium system of appointment, simply refusing to appoint judges he doesn't approve of. Similarly, Narendra has refused to appoint commissioners to the Central Information Commission, which handles freedom of information requests from the public, grinding its work to a halt. A third set of tactics has been outright intimidation and abuse of legal powers. India's Central Bureau of Investigation (CBI), the country's FBI equivalent, has a long-standing problem of being unduly influenced by political considerations, a problem that has gotten far worse since 2014. Under the previous Congress government, 60% of CBI investigations into politicians targeted opposition leaders. Under Narendra, that figure has jumped to 95%. The recent state-level conviction of Congress leader Rahul Gandhi and his subsequent expulsion from Parliament speak to the way that both law enforcement and the legal system has been politicized across the board. Tax enforcement plays a similar role. When a leader of the Independent Election Commission voted to penalize Narendra for hate speech on the campaign trail in 2019, he swiftly came under tax investigation, as did his sister, wife and son. This year, the tax police raided the BBC's India's offices after the broadcaster had released a documentary on Narendra's role in the 2002 Gujarat riots. The BBC raid speaks to yet another area of democratic backsliding, a clampdown on the independent press and freedom of speech more broadly through new rules, like the creation of an agency empowered to take down social media posts and harassment of journalists and human rights organizations. But it has also happened more subtly through consolidation of media ownership in the hands of ultra-rich moguls friendly to Narendra and the BJP like Gautam Adani and Mukesh Ambani. The weaker checks on Narendra's authority get, the more he is empowered to infuse the Indian state with Hindu nationalistic ideals, and the harder it will be for the divided Indian opposition to unseat the BJP through electoral means. Can Indian democracy be saved? This is not the first time India's democracy has been in crisis. In June 1975, in the midst of an episode of civil unrest, Congress Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, a charismatic, populistic, not entirely dissimilar from Narendra, announced the beginning of a so-called emergency which in effect suspended basic rights and freedoms. For nearly 2 years, the Indian state was a functional autocracy. News outlets were placed under a strict censorship regime. Police rounded up Gandhi's political opponents, including RSS leaders, and imprisoned them. In March 1977, the emergency suddenly ended. Indira Gandhi announced new elections, which Congress lost. She left power voluntarily, only to return after the next round of elections. And Indian democracy moved away from a system dominated by the Congress party, to a healthier multi-party system. Does this provide reason for optimism that Narendra might fall in a similarly surprising fashion? The experts I spoke with were skeptical. While the emergency was a blatant suspension of democracy in response to immediate events, Narendra's power grabs have involved a more subtle and durable corruption of institutions unfolding over the course of years. The way that they control information, the way they can amass funding, part of that, of course, is by changing funding laws, is pretty impressive, says Milan Vaishnav, the director of the South Asian program at Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. However grim, an unfavorable comparison to the emergency might make the situation appear. It is also important to note that Indian democracy is not dead yet. There are upcoming scheduled elections in 2024, and there is a chance, unlikely but a real one, that Narendra may go the way of Donald Trump and Brazil's Jair Bolsonaro. That the BJP can still lose elections has been demonstrated by recent state-level defeats. Like in the fiercely contested 2021 West Bengal election, India's federal system means that state governments have a reasonable amount of power. And even at the national level, opposition parties still retain some capacity to get their message out. Between September 2022 and January 2023, Rahul Gandhi embarked on a pilgrimage called the Bharat Jodo, Unite India Yatra across 2,200 miles of Indian territory. The demonstration, which evoked a tradition of political vatras in India, was designed as an explicit act of protest against Narendra's politics of division. It seems to have done real work in rehabilitating Gandhi and the Congress in general. He acquired charisma because of his lifestyle on the march and the way he related to people. In a society where the stigma of caste is so strong, he had no problems shaking hands with any of the people passing by, says Jafarlal. For all of these reasons, the 2024 national elections are shaping up to be absolutely critical for India's future. Not that you can tell from the US government's public response. In October 2021, President Biden declared that defending human rights and demonstrating that democracies deliver for their people is at the center of my administration's foreign policy. This has not been the case when it comes to its India policy, which has focused overwhelmingly on quoting the Narendra's government as an ally against China rather than challenging its anti-democratic practices. I don't detect any willingness, any serious efforts on the part of this administration to hold India to a higher democratic standard, Vaishnav says. A White House spokesperson suggested to me that this is something that top American officials bring up in high-level meetings, presumably privately. In these engagements, we address policy differences constructively and in an atmosphere of mutual respect, the spokesperson said. One should hope so. A slide toward Hindu nationalistic authoritarianism in India doesn't serve America's interest, especially given the ever-present risk of conflict with nuclear-armed Pakistan, and the contradiction between the administration's soaring rhetoric about democracy and its relative quiet about the world's most important instance of democratic backsliding is glaring. There are some actions the administration could take that could matter at the margins, at the very least, by suggesting during the upcoming state dinner and future engagements that there might be some cost if Narendra takes things too far. But at the same time, the United States' ability to change the course of Indian democratic politics should not be overstated. What happens in India will ultimately be determined by what Indians decide to do in 2024 and beyond. Choices that given India's size and rising influence, will have profound consequences for the future of democracy around the world. With this, world's largest democracy collapsing before our eyes is complete in 3 parts. This is an article written after doing research. Let's understand from the perspective of the author, and we will also do soul searching bias to understand what is happening in the country, whether it is good for our country, good for our citizens. As Hindus also, we will have to think about this, and we will have to act as per our conscience and what is required for the future of the humanity. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Please share to the people of your like-minded people. Thanks for watching.